What up, folks? What's going on? Welcome to episode 113 of the Spun Today Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz. Thank you very much for listening. In this episode, I speak about watching John Leguizamo's Latin History for Morons, available on Netflix. I also speak about watching a series of half-hour comedy specials under the name The Degenerates, also available on Netflix. Yo, Netflix should sponsor this fucking show. I also speak about watching season 4, the latest season of Better Call Saul. Then I wrap things up with speaking about something dope that in elementary school, I think here in New York, I just tried finding, Googling it and finding the original news story that I heard it from, but I heard it on New York One, which reports mainly on New York shit. It's the local news here. I saw it on there, but I couldn't find it now. But regardless, it's a dope concept and idea of something that they have going on, and something really cool that I recently found out about that has to do with an Amazon Prime original program, original show, and podcasts. Stick around if you want to listen to any of that good stuff. But first, a word from our sponsor. Spoiler alert, the sponsor is me. For those of you that are new to the podcast, there's a couple ways you can help support. Rate and review the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcasting platform. Another way you can help support the podcast is by shopping on Amazon. But instead of going to Amazon.com, go to SpunToday.com and click on the affiliate links tab on my website. There you'll see an Amazon banner, click that, and it'll take you to Amazon.com. There you'll do your shopping like you normally do, and it will not cost you anything extra, but it will help support the podcast just for driving traffic to their website. So John Leguizamo has this one-man show, one-man play that was on Broadway, and I really wanted to see but didn't get to. My brother saw it. He told me it was dope. And I'm just a big fan of John Leguizamo, always have been. He, his comedic acting, and really like his one-man shows. He has 4, if I'm not mistaken. I've seen 3. The first one was Freak, which I loved. It was my absolute favorite, which came out in 1998. And I saw it sometime back then, but then I rewatched it a couple years ago, and it holds up. It was super cool and entertaining. Then he has another one called, the second one, called Sexaholics, or Sexaholic, and then followed by Ghetto Clown. And I saw one of those two. I don't remember which one it was. I want to say it was Sexaholic, but I'm starting to think it was Ghetto Clown. I'm not sure, but the latest one made me want to go back and rewatch the first one definitely, and the other two as well. And coughing just reminded me to apologize for not being able to record an new episode for the last release. But I was feeling like shit and sounded like shit if you guys heard from my intro. Not that I sound too much better now, or normally rather. But I'm sure you guys wouldn't want to hear an hour or so of me sounding the way I was sounding. Also, I thought it would be cool, and it's kind of like a little podcast hack, podcast cheat, if you will, to re-release old episodes in just introducing old episodes to a newer audience that may not go back and listen to the entire back catalog, even though the back catalog of the Spun Today Podcast is and always will be completely free for your listening pleasure. But I know most folks, if they stumble upon this podcast, aren't going to go back and listen to every single one. So it's kind of a cool way to reintroduce some content which is still relevant. I re-release the audiobooks that I make from my own short stories that I've written, and I like re-releasing those. I've done that I think 2 or 3 times already. with different stories. Because the first time that I actually recorded the audiobook versions of those short stories was like 3-4 years ago in some cases. So it's cool in that sense to release it. Plus, it gives me a little break, I guess, from recording. Not that I want one, but sometimes it's needed. As you guys saw with me being sick, or if life circumstances just do not permit. But back to John Leguizamo. Besides his one-man shows, I like the movies that he's in, from comedic acting roles, like this movie from back in the day that I think was called Freak 2 for some reason. But I'm not positive on that. It was about it was like a corny, silly comedy. But he was just good in it, with him going to some like rich guy's house, and then the rich guy wanting to like hunt him or some shit like that. To more serious roles, like as of more recently, the cop that he played, the partner of Brian Callen in the Ice Cube and Kevin Hart cop movies. I forget what they're called. To other roles, like more like sappy roles, like he has a lot of fucking range, actually. Sappy roles, like I guess you have to, right? When you're like a theater actor as well. What's the movie I was thinking of? This movie when he was married to a black girl. And it's like a Christmas movie. It's like a black Christmas movie. That's pretty good too. And I don't know, I'm just a fan of John Leguizamo's. And this latest one-man show that was on Broadway is called Latin History for Morons. And it was captivating. It's entertaining, and he makes it funny. He makes it heartfelt with his relationship with his son, which is pretty much the entire plot of the story, is him telling a story about his son and helping his son out with something. He drops some gems also about Latin history, which, as a Latin Dominican American guy myself, resonates, and it kind of makes you want to look back on certain things that he says that you're like, damn, is that true? Let me look that up. Or certain books that he referenced, and like the research that he was doing to help his son out with a school project that he had. And it was really informative and just captivating, just entertaining and funny and dope to watch. I like plays, like you guys know, and I was bummed out that I didn't get to see this one, and then was that much more excited when I saw that it was on Netflix. And a play on Netflix I thought wouldn't work. Like, I kind of, seeing a recording of a play, I feel like takes away from it, and I'm sure it did. I'm sure in person it was probably better. But I always thought that concept odd, and which is why I haven't seen this play that I do want to watch. And now I'll probably definitely will watch it, because I saw that the medium kind of works on Netflix on a recording. Is a play with Nick Kroll and John Mulaney. They play like two old guys or something like that. I want to check that out. But anyway, I didn't think it would work, and it did. I was excited when I saw that it was on Netflix, and hopefully Netflix actually gets his back catalog of the other one-man shows that Leguizamo has. Maybe they do already. Gotta check that shit out. Anyway, here's a cool little excerpt that I want to play for you guys from this show. Like I said, it's about it's a lot of like father and son stuff, which you guys know gets me every time, and always has. And I think more so now, maybe it resonates more now that I am a father, and I see it from the other angle, from the other way, because before it, and still does, like, get to me in terms of me being a son side of things. But now I get to kind of sort of see things, not kind of sort of, I get to see things from both sides, being a son and a father. And it's pretty dope, it's pretty interesting. And I don't know, this like small little scene just resonated with me.
And bam, I had my comeback. I was the father I wanted my son to have. And then my wife just elbows the shit out of me. John, shh, would you be quiet? Buddy's about to talk. And then at that exact moment, I hear them call my son's name out loud. And this was the moment, man. This is the moment I've been dreading my whole life. Because I couldn't go up there with him anymore. I couldn't help him. I couldn't fix it for him. I couldn't save him. I just had to let go. John, shh, would you be quiet? Not everything's about you, John. Okay. And then I see my son approaching the podium, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that was my boy. I mean, who was this kid? Who was this amazing young man walking towards the podium?
And I'm not going to play the rest because it's kind of towards the end and it might ruin it. But what he does next is pretty much like walks up to the podium as his son and acts out his son's part of that scene. But just that little snippet, especially the part where he says that he was the father or became the father that he wanted his son to have, was like just such a visceral point, such a succinct point. You know, when you hear something and you just get it and like understand it like wholeheartedly from every and any way that you can understand something and get something, like you know that you get it. It's like hearing something that you've always felt said in a way that you've never said it and you've never been able to articulate, or that you've never even heard before. Like that's how that was to me. So needless to say, I recommend you guys checking that out. Again, it's John Leguizamo's Latin History for Morons, and it's available on Netflix. Speaking of Netflix, the official and unofficial sponsor of the Spun Today Podcast, I mentioned 2 episodes ago, episode 111, that the Degenerates was going to come out, and it did, and I saw a whole bunch of them. Joey Coco Diaz killed it as expected. He was really funny. It's cool to see Joey on like a big stage, like Netflix, like a big platform like this, because he's kind of like the guy that you didn't expect to make it but made it. He's like the underdog that you root for even though you know he won't win, but then he does, so it's like dope as hell, you know what I mean? I really want to see what he does with An Hour. I've seen him live. I met him, took a picture with him and shit. And I listen to the Church of What's Happening Now podcast all the time. And I've seen his 1 hour special that he had before this one on CISO, which was a platform that no longer exists. And now I finally got this half-hour Netflix special, and he wasn't too happy with it. You know, he's spoken about it like on the podcast and on Rogan's podcast as well, that it wasn't his he wasn't happy with it. He wasn't happy with how it came out, and he feels that he kind of restrained himself a bit for Netflix, for being on this big stage. And I think he even mentioned that they gave him a couple notes with certain things that they wanted to trim or cut down or whatever in his half hour, and he actually complied, but then he regretted it because it wasn't, it didn't come out as pure as he wanted, I guess. But I really enjoyed it. I saw it twice and laughed a lot, and it was cool. It was vindicating in a weird way to see Joey on the stage, and it was pretty dope. He was either my first or very close second favorite special of all the Degenerate specials, and I'll get into the other one next. But he has this hilarious bit that the special's out already, so spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. He speaks about being an older guy. Joey's 51, 54, something like that. He speaks about the F word that you're not supposed to say anymore. The F word that rhymes with maggot. If you don't know Joey, he has this like larger than life personality, and he gets he goes on these like pissed off like rants, and he starts flipping out about not being able to say that word anymore. And he's like, I'm an old man. You can't change the fucking rules in between. Right? When I was younger, you could say it. Now you can. I'm an old man. You can't change the fucking rules in between. Which I thought was just like hilarious, and like the concept of it. And he was like, plus it didn't even mean what it means. It wasn't a word for a gay person. He was like, he said something to the effect of, when you're walking down the street and an ambulance passes by and it has its sirens like blaring, and there's a guy standing on the corner and he puts his fingers in his ears while the ambulance drives by because he doesn't want to like hear like the sounds. That's a faggot. He's like, it doesn't mean gay person. I don't know, that shit's just funny as fuck to me. And he's just funny as hell to me. I hope he gets from the popularity of this hour special through Netflix as well, or one of the other like big time places like either a Showtime or Comedy Central. But Netflix is definitely like the premier place now for stand-up comedy. But they have like so much of it that's the argument, right? Like it's like there's like so much of it, so much stand-up comedy now available on Netflix that it's kind of like diluting it. But I've spoken about this in the past, and I don't think that's the case. It's like there's something for everyone. Like you like different styles or different types of comedy, you can take your pick. You know what I mean? I don't think there has to be a limited amount in order for them to, I don't think a limited amount of specials automatically makes them all good, or a larger quantity of them good. They could still be, if there's 10 specials, there could still be 8 of them that are dog shit. Or they could be 100 and fucking 80 of them are dog shit, or 20 of them are dog shit. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. Anyway, the other special that I thought was awesome, and it's another comic that I like, and he kind of like overlaps with that whole like Rogan camp and Comedy Store scene, but he's from New York, and he overlaps by way of Ari Shaffir, which I guess like became cool with him when Ari moved to New York, and he was in the comedy scene here in New York, and since becoming cool with Ari and being on Ari's podcast, and was introduced, I guess, to Rogan, and was on Rogan's podcast a couple of times, and just seems like a cool cat. And I like his stand-up. I've seen, I saw his, not a special, but a show that Ari had called This Is Not Happening, which was on Comedy Central. It's a show that actually Comedy Central still has it. It was Ari's show originally. He sold it to Comedy Central and hosted it for a couple of seasons, and then they parted ways. They had some creative differences, but Netflix, kept the name and the idea. And Ari still does he calls it a quote unnamed storytelling show or something like that. It's the pretty much the same concept, same thing, same show, but the original, because Ari created this shit. Anyway, I saw Big J Ogerson's story on there, and I thought it was really cool and funny. And I've heard him on podcasts, and I like the guy. This is the first special that I saw completely, half-hour special of his that I saw, and I honestly thought it was the best one, along with Joey's. It was like number one or very close number two. And when I think of like bits from either set, I like Joey's more than I like Big J's more, and they're top 1 and 2 pretty much of the Degenerate specials. So definitely check that one out as well. I also liked Brad Williams, I would say, was the next funniest one to me. I also saw, and Brad Williams is a small person. I'm not sure what the PC term is or whatever, but he calls himself a midget. So, but I know that you're not supposed to use midget. So, he's really self-deprecating and just had like some funny jokes, which were interesting, and he was like really high energy, which is pretty cool. And Christina Pajitsky, I saw some of hers, and I like Christina. She's a co-host of Your Mom's House podcast, and married to another dope comic, which is Tom Segura. But her comedy, I saw her 1 hour special, which she has currently on Netflix, called Mother Superior, if I'm not mistaken. And I thought it was good. Didn't love it, but I thought it was good, and I felt the same way about this half-hour one. She's obviously a seasoned, polished comic, but just like I was saying, different tastes, for different people. She's not exactly my cup of tea in terms of comedy, but I could appreciate the fact that I know it's good quality. You know what I mean? Then I saw some of Yamanika's special, which was also under the Degenerates, and there was one other one which I did not see, or I did not watch yet, but definitely worth a watch. Of absolutely the Joy Diaz and the Big J one, and if you want to give any of the other ones a shot, feel free. You might see something in them that I did not, or you might like them more than I did, but definitely without a doubt you'll enjoy the Joy Diaz one and or the Big J Okerson one. Again, they're streaming now on Netflix, and it's called The Degenerates, and they're only a half hour long each. It's not a long hour long comedy special, so it flies by. A couple bits and you're done. So go laugh a little, folks. Better Call Saul. Better Call Saul is starting to turn the Breaking Bad corner, I think. And especially with the way of how season 4 ended. Spoiler alert. And we're beginning to see in this season a lot more overlap with the origins of how a lot of things came to be in Breaking Bad. Like things that existed. For example, the lab where Walter White and cooks for the Pollos Hermanos guy, Frank, and the like that secret entrance from the laundromat place, like you get to see in Better Call Saul, the way that place was built and what it took to create it, basically. Hector Salamanca in Better Call Saul is fine and well, and a drug dealer that is rising through the ranks, or at least trying to, and you find out how he becomes paralyzed, which he is all throughout Breaking Bad. And it's pretty much the doing of my boy Nacho, which I don't remember from Breaking Bad, but I really like his character in Better Call Saul, so I'm assuming he gets clipped sometime next season. And I really think that next season might be the last, or they might stretch it out to a 6th season. But next season definitely might be the last of Better Call Saul, and if I had to guess. And I'm just saying that because the way it ends is that Jimmy McGill, which is aka Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad, he's disbarred, or not completely disbarred, but suspended, and loses his license to practice. And for about a year and a half or something like that, then he has to appeal it after that year and a half and show that he's a productive member of society and he's able to practice again, etc., etc. So what he does is at the end, and this is like the big reveal of how Jimmy McGill becomes Saul Goodman, is that he wins his appeal finally after like a second attempt, and then says that he wants to practice under a DBA, and that DBA is obviously Saul Goodman. I feel like in this season you get a lot of what made Jimmy McGill, what was the straw that broke the camel's back, and what made Jimmy McGill turn into Saul Goodman finally. Because he always had this like shady kind of side to him, this willing to do underhanded things kind of side, but was, and is by all accounts a good guy, cares about his girl Kim, and took care of his brother in terms of like his sickness and like mental issues. But then his brother passes away, and he held those feelings about his brother passing pretty close to his chest, and didn't show emotions about it, to the point that his girl Kim was worried about him, wanted him to go see a psychiatrist, etc. And I feel like he always wanted to make his brother proud, but never felt like he did, never felt like he was good enough. And then when he died, kind of like resented the fact that he died, and he would just like never be able to show him that he was good enough. The shit is that what he was great at, what he was really good at, was those shady, scamming type of things that he probably wanted his brother to like see the genius in some of his schemes, and he never did, because his brother was very like on the straight and narrow. And that actually reminded me a bit of, if you guys remember, from the movie Boiler Room, which is one of my favorite movies, where Seth tells his father, which is a judge, that he ran this legit business, and that his dad had to be impressed if he just would have like stepped foot in the casino one time. It was an illegal card game by Queens College that he set up to like service the Queens College kids, and that's how he was like paying his way through school and making his money and paying his rent and stuff like that. And he had a couple of employees and payroll and a client list, and he had like a legit illegitimate business. And he felt that if his father at least saw how he ran it and didn't just see it as like the stigma of being an illegal card game, that he would have been proud of him in some weird way. And I feel that Jimmy felt that way about his brother in Better Call Saul. Then his realization that he wouldn't be able to live up to whatever ideals his brother had of him, his way to rebel against that, and was also a way to rebel against the justice system in and of itself, was to just double down with the whole scheming and scamming thing. And his brother was kind of like a manifestation of the justice system to him, because he was Joe Law. And the season ending the way it did kind of just highlighted the fact that he's like, yeah, you know what, fuck this, I'm going all in on this other side. And it was a pretty dope season. But like I said, I think it's coming to an end. A fifth season that's a touch more higher paced than the fourth one was would be great. Even though the fourth season was really good, don't get me wrong, but I just mean that I could see them doing a fifth and a sixth season, just to lay everything out. But if they do it a bit more higher paced, they can wrap things up, I think, in the fifth season. Cram a few more things into each episode in the fifth one. Easier said than done, right? And spoken from a guy that's never in a fucking TV show, let alone Breaking Bad, one of the greatest TV shows ever, followed up by one of the greatest sequels to a TV show ever. Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould hit me up. I got some gems for you guys, ironically enough. All right, so like I said in the beginning of the show, there was this story that I heard on New York One, which is a local news station when you have Spectrum cable. And it's definitely my favorite news to watch. I don't know if it's the like 10-10 wins format of it, where they give you like the weather every 10 minutes while you're watching. Excuse me. And certain stories like every 10 minutes while you're watching, and the headlines of the day, and shit you need to know. Traffic every 10 minutes as well. And I don't know, I like that. I listen to it and watch it like every morning. They had a piece on there where this school that I'm assuming is in New York, because again, it's a New York based show, but I couldn't find it online now. And when I Googled it, I found out that there's, other schools in other states and cities and stuff that do similar things, which is great. But the school introduced meditation and yoga in their PE class. And the yoga was like, an option in physical education. And that's pretty cool, pretty different. And what I really liked is the meditation. Like, you guys know, I'm into meditating. And I think it's so, like, they showed like the students, in class meditating and doing some like self-reflection exercises, seeing that type of progressive, like, forward thinking, and just that like genuine effort being put into, and thought being put into these kids' education in public schools was refreshing to see and to hear. I mean, I personally know the benefits of meditation, and I could just imagine someone that's introduced to meditation at a young age like that, like in elementary school, and being taught the mechanics of how it could work, and someone sticking with it from like a young age. The benefits could be extraordinary for them in the future, and that makes me hopeful as a parent of the product of a public school kid, if podcast sponsorships and Patreon support doesn't begin to pick up. But if it does, my kids are going to private school, so fuck yeah. Let me stop. But even in, I see other, I guess, like, parallel things where it comes to the thought put behind the food that kids eat in school. It's not just the, processed like burgers and pizzas that like I used to get in elementary school. My niece now in pre-K, my oldest niece, she gets exposed to a variety of different foods like jerk chicken and tofu and like different things to like teach them about different foods and nutrition. And that's like another healthy thing that's being introduced to kids at a young age, which I think is just amazing. So it was definitely worth a shout out here on the Spun Today podcast. And last but not least, speaking of podcasts, I just want to say real quick that I think it's super cool, super dope, and like the tip of the iceberg of showing the power of podcasts. Obviously, I'm a podcaster. I believe in podcasts. I have for many years. I've said before, and I'll say it again, that podcasts will somehow, some way change the world in the way that the internet fundamentally changed the world, and in ways that I can't fathom or articulate. But something like this is just showing the range or the reach of podcasts, where there is a podcast, which I haven't heard, that is now being made into a TV show, a Amazon Prime original show called Homecoming, starring Julia Roberts, one of the dopest actresses out there. How dope is that? How fucking cool is that? There's a new Amazon Prime original programming, new TV show called Homecoming, which is based on a podcast. And just that in and of itself is dope. But the fact that it's starring Julia Roberts, is sick. And with that, folks, I'm going to end the show. Episode 113 of the Spun Today Podcast is in the books. I appreciate the fuck out of you guys for listening, and hope you stay tuned to listen to some tunes and then hear some ways on how you can help support the Spun Today Podcast.
Having a wonderful day, and I won't fight with my wives. It's the first of the month, and I'll be smoking, joking, rolling, busting, sipping on 40 ounces again. Come, we got the blunts and rum. All night we high, get up the back to where 99. I give up my nigga to give me some yo. Double up, nigga, what you need? We got weed to get B.O.D. Fiend for the green league. Double up for the first to show, but it lay low. Cause the pop creep when they roll so quick if you can't get away, but it don't stay, yo. Keep your bankroll. We're having a celebration to stay high. You can never believe when it's time to grind. I'm down for mine. Crime after crime. From the creep to the bag, cause mom's got a grub on the grill. If we got the food, you know it's the first of the month, and my nigga, we chills for real. Wake up, wake up, wake up. It's wake up, wake up.
Would you like to receive a short email from me once a week? You know that feeling you have on a Monday at work when you have absolutely nothing to look forward to except for lunch? Have no fear, the Midday Monday Boost letter is here. In this short weekly newsletter, you will receive 5 things. 1 is a photograph of the week from a photographer, a podcast of the week. I listen to tons of podcasts, dozens and dozens of podcasts, hundreds of episodes, and I cherry pick the best ones, and I share them with you here. You'll also receive a video of the week, which could be anything from a rap battle to a TED Talk. You receive a quote of the week, something to let marinate in your mind, and a word of the week so that you and I can both step up our vocab. So if any of that sounds of interest to you, check it out. Check out the subscribe page at spuntoday.com/subscribe. Drop in your email address and you'll receive the very next one. For any writers or creatives out there, I have a questionnaire. It's a 5-question questionnaire that anyone is free to fill out. It's located at spuntoday.com/questionnaire. And what it is 5 open-ended questions related to your craft. It's things like what inspires you to write or create whenever you don't feel the inspiration to do so. What are your favorite apps or tools or tricks to trick yourself into getting into the mind state of actually creating? What inspires you, etc., stuff like that. And what I do with your responses is share them on a future episode of the podcast. Now, you can choose to remain anonymous. If you choose to, you have that option right there when you fill out the questionnaire. And if you do not choose to remain anonymous, I give you a shout out on the podcast and promote for free whatever it is that you have going on. So I appreciate you in advance for sharing that with me, as well as the rest of the listeners of the Spun Today Podcast, which would stand to gain from you filling out the questionnaire. Now, you can help support the podcast in a myriad of ways. One way, which does not cost you anything and is most popular within the podcasting community, is by shopping on Amazon using my affiliate links banner. So the way that works is you go to spuntoday.com/affiliate links, or just click on the affiliate links tab at the top center of the page. And there you will see a banner for Amazon. You literally just click on that and it takes you to Amazon's website where you do your shopping like you normally do. It does not cost you anything extra, but Amazon will give me a kickback just for driving traffic to their website. So that would be a big help. It literally costs you nothing extra financially, just costs you a couple of extra clicks of your mouse before you do your Amazon shopping. The iTunes banner that's on that same page works the same way. So if you're purchasing music or movies or whatever it is on iTunes, feel free to go through my affiliate link portal there as well. If you want to make a one-time PayPal donation, feel free to do so. There's a PayPal donation button on there as well. Within that same tab, you'll also find a link to the Spun Today Viral Style store. Now, the Viral Style store is a store where you can get Spun Today merch, whether it's a coffee mug or a t-shirt that I personally designed. And spoiler alert, I'm no Ralph Lauren or, whoever designs Gucci stuff. But I did create the design of those shirts myself. I have a couple t-shirts on there. One that says, for example, Right Need Every Day, which is a play off of Snoop, Dre, and Nate Dogg's Smoke Weed Every Day. So it's Right Need Every Day with like a puff cloud of smoke behind it. I have a Podcast Versus Everybody t-shirt and just stuff like that. So check it out. The link to the Viral Style store is also there. You can also help support the podcast on a reoccurring basis if you become a Patreon supporter. Now, Patreon is pretty cool, and there's a little video explanation of what it is and how it works, but I'll try to do my best to summarize it here. Basically, you sign on to Patreon, which is a free service, free account, and you can support not just myself, but any and other podcasters or creatives that also have Patreon pages. And you can choose to, for example, donate $1 to them on a per episode basis. So the Spun Today podcast has 2 episodes a month. So if you donate $1 to it, it'll be $2 a month, basically. And you set it up, and it just happens automatically on a reoccurring basis. There are 0 fees. You can cancel at any time. No hassle, no bullshit. And it's a cool way to help support, and is much appreciated. And also, it's not just like for example, a PayPal donation, which is just that, but through Patreon, it allows the creator, in this case being myself, to set up a reward system, if you will. So if you donate $1 per episode, you are considered a tier 1 supporter. If you donate $3 per episode, you are a second tier supporter, etc., etc. And it goes up to 4 tiers, and each tier gets different things. Like tier 1 gets a free Spun Today bookmark and a shout out on the podcast. Tier 3 gets those 2 things from tier 1, as well as a free writing piece that's not posted on my website or available to anyone else, etc., etc. So check that out if you will. And visit my Patreon page at Patreon, patreon.com/Spun Today. Another great, amazing way to help support the podcast is to rate and review it. This costs you absolutely nothing. Whether you listen on iTunes, on Stitcher, on TuneIn, on iHeartRadio, on Pocket Casts, on Overcast, on Player FM, on Google Play, on YouTube, on Tumblr, or if you listen on Podbay or any other of your favorite podcast apps. Please rate and review the episode. It really is the number one way to help the show gain traction, gain exposure. You could also share it with friends and family and tell them, check out what this idiot is saying. Some of it is actually pretty good. Or it all fucking sucks and you should listen and laugh. But as long as you're listening, it would be much appreciated. So rate and review the podcast wherever it is that you listen. Follow me on Twitter or on Instagram at Spun Today. Like the Facebook fan page at facebook.com/Spun Today. Subscribe to my YouTube page as well. All podcast episodes are available on YouTube, as well as clipped versions. For example, with the Random Rant episodes, I speak about a bunch of different topics instead of having the full episode alone, which is also available on YouTube. But you also have snippets of the different topics broken up into more digestible chunks. So check that out. You can also support by checking out my book, Make Way for You, Tips for Getting Out of Your Own Way. It's a quick short read if you're looking for some inspiration and motivation, and you can find out more about it at spuntoday.com/books. There you'll find a video of me telling you all how the book came to fruition, as well as a couple of audio excerpts. If you're interested, you can purchase it wherever books are sold: Kindle, iBooks, Kobo, in ebook or paperback format, which you can find on Amazon. Also, for being a Spun Today listener, I can also send you a free copy. right there on that same landing page at spuntoday.com/books. Drop in your email address at the bottom of the page, and I'll shoot you over a copy in the format of your choice. And that's all I got, folks. Thanks again for checking out this episode. And as always, substitute the mysticism with hard work and start taking steps in the general direction of your dreams. Thanks for listening.